Boys and girls, this is the magic door to the wonderful magic toy shop.
Hello, I'm Ron Curtis.
Hafner's Red Barn, like it used to be.
Goldberg's, the money saver.
The Bebop Shop, Liverpool, where music is still fun.
Oh, Duncan O'Bright, oh, Duncan O'Bright, oh, Duncan O'Bright, oh, Duncan O'Bright.
It's happening now at Pincan Mall.
Well, hello there, bloody buddies. This is your old pal, Baron Damon, for the Syracuse Nostalgia Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of the Syracuse Nostalgia Podcast. My name is Ham. This podcast celebrates the history of Syracuse and surrounding areas. And this is now the longest running Syracuse Nostalgia Podcast, if you believe that, Ken.
Hard to believe, but yes.
Yeah, the longest running one ever. And I stole that joke from Chris Jericho. Anyway, with me is my friend Ken. He was on the episode 1 as well. How you doing, Ken?
I'm doing fine, Brian. Thanks for having me here.
I still find it difficult to say Syracuse Nostalgia. I feel like Sylvester from the Bugs Bunny cartoons.
I love Sylvester.
Syracuse Nostalgia. And that's my segue. This is a segue alert. I used to have speech therapy classes in Main Street School.
Okay.
And it was elementary school. It's in North Syracuse, on Route 11. And it's like an early education center now or something, but it was built in 1925, I believe.
Goodness.
And my grandfather went to high school there. It was originally a high school. So that that's how back my family goes in the area.
Wow.
And I went to elementary school there, K through 5. It was 1970 something until 1983, which was the last year. It was elementary school. And I took speech therapy classes there. And I remember that the playground was it was next to a cemetery, which I thought was weird for an elementary school. And the kids would scare the hell out of other kids. Like look, there's a ghost or
rite of passage kind of.
One of the stories I was told was that the gravestones that were flat instead of being upright, if they were flat, that meant they were evil, satanic.
Wow.
Graves. I don't know, but the playground included a monkey bars, a basketball court. I don't know why 5-year-old would want a basketball court. It was like a full regulation size.
Yeah. Standard size.
Yeah. And there was a awesome happy face slide. There's this big slide with a big happy face on it, and it's at the Budget Inn in North Syracuse right now.
Wow.
And I don't know why. Everybody that goes to that school remembers that freaking slide. It was just so goofy because imagine just really a giant happy face was the whole slide. I mean the top part.
All right.
And kids used to climb on top of the whole thing, and it was probably very dangerous. And I also remember the gym for Main Street School was down in the basement, and gym teachers back then. I don't know if you have the same memory, but I think
probably similar.
Gym teachers, I thought back then were pretty evil, especially the kids that weren't athletic. Like they made us play dodgeball, which is probably the most evil thing you could do to a 5 or 8-year-old kid.
I must be an aberration. I love dodgeball.
Oh my God. Really? Well, probably
really, I love
you're so short that the balls just go over your head.
Well,
right?
that was one of the perks.
Uh-oh. We got a phone call in here.
Oh, wonderful.
Anyway, I mean, can you imagine describing this to someone who doesn't know what it is? Okay, you get a bunch of kids stand on opposite. There's 2 ways to play it. Oh,
right.
Sorry, 2 ways to play it. Stand on the opposite sides of the gym and throw balls at each other and try to hit each other.
Really?
Then there's another way where you stand.
You were younger.
You stand against the wall.
Okay.
And they throw it, and then which way were you familiar with?
Well, I must admit that what I'm thinking of more is like high school dodgeball. So in high school dodgeball, we didn't stand up against the sides. That was maybe if we stood in a line and then, they picked 2 people to be captain of each team.
Oh, yeah.
And then they would take turns and pick who it was. But the dodgeball that I recall, at least, not in elementary school, but high school, that was exciting. There was plenty of us that didn't like it, of course.
That was me.
But I was definitely in the group that loved it because we would play it repeatedly, and whether you were athletic or not, there were plenty of times when you would get to catch a ball and the person was out. I believe that was part of it.
Yeah, if you caught the ball, that means whoever threw it was out.
Yeah, and chances are I almost never could catch the ball because I had the worst catching available. You could put it in my hand, I'd probably drop it. But a lot of times it was definitely fun because I'm not that tall, in theory, kind of agile. So someone would aim right for my head from like only 5 feet away. They would miss me, hit the 2-3 people behind me. It was just fun. I just recall it being fun.
I don't know.
But it was brutal. I mean,
I don't think I've ever heard anybody describe it as fun.
Well,
before. It's just like you throw hard objects at other children, and it was like a nightmare for me. Of
course, if you got someone gunning after you who's like the baseball star of the school, I was like the little geeky kid, and all these, the kids who were good at sports would throw these hard objects at me. It was a nightmare. And I swear the gym teachers were evil too. Like, they were just like giant bullies. That's what it kind of seemed like to me at the time. And then our gym at Main Street School was also where we performed our plays every year. Every year the music teacher would put on a play, and the 5th grade kids would do it. And for me, it was the Muppet Show. All right. That was popular. I used to love the Muppet Show, especially the 2 older guys. I loved them.
Statler and Waldorf.
I love them. They were great. I mean, I wish Muppets was around now because one of my favorite phrases from the Muppet Show is when Gonzo comes up on a motorcycle. They're like, "What's Gonzo going to do now?" And the other one goes, "Who cares as long as he kills himself?" And it's like, that's so brutal, but it was funny back then. I mean, I doubt that they could have a show like that now.
Didn't they bring back the Muppet Show like last year or the year before?
Well, I'm just going by what I heard on the internet, and that could be a lie. But from what I heard, they had to have ratings notices on the DVD for Sesame Street and Muppet Show.
Well, anyway, yeah, my play was the Muppet Show, and we would work on the play all year long with the music teacher, and there'd be musical performances that I'm sure were stellar from a bunch of 10-year-olds, and I played saxophone, so I was in the Muppet Baby Band, it was called.
All right, okay.
And there's nothing for a little geeky kid. There's nothing that looks cooler than to wear baby makeup and a baby outfit and go on stage on your knees and play the saxophone. That all the cool kids love that. They, that definitely gave them more ammunition to drill me about. But yeah, I have pictures from the play, and my brother, who was 4 years older than I am, he was in a play. He was in Alice in Wonderland, and he was a card. He's one of the giant cards, the Queen's cards, whatever they were called. But yeah, from like 77 to 83, they did those plays every year, and I would love to see, somebody had to videotape one of them. Contact me on the site. I would love to see a video of one of those plays. But what else was I going to say about the school? Gym class. Yeah. Oh, and then we had the art department was also in the basement.
Okay.
Main Street School, and that was that was always a fun trip. I'm left-handed, and they didn't have any damn left-handed scissors.
I'm so sorry.
So I couldn't do any of my stupid projects right. When you had to cut a piece of paper and make a star or something. Mine always
like a certain shape. You have to cut it up and add it to the project.
Yeah, I did it, and mine would always look like Camilla Small or something half-assed like. But did you have any fun memories of your schools growing up, or you wanted to share with us?
I guess nothing really comes to mind. I mean, I more or less remember more, I guess, of high school than.
That was that fun thing we were talking about earlier.
What was that?
When you got your assignments in elementary school, we're talking about the 70s and 80s here, right? You would get them on dittos.
Oh yeah,
remember dittos
before
before
Xerox
like, or even like computer printers.
Yeah.
They would have diddles.
Way before.
Yeah. So, yeah, those were diddle machines the teacher would have in their lounge, and they would like crank them out, I think, right? Like on a.
There were, I recall this spinning cylinder.
Right.
Near the top, and there was like a certain level of ink that had to be in it, or it had so many rotations for. Right, and sometimes it would smear.
Yeah, it would smear, and you'd get
right
it
off the paper and get it all over you.
You get it on your desk, and it would be all blue, and it would be warm. And of course, being left-handed again, if I tried to write on it, all the blue ink would get all over my hand.
Yeah, as your reward.
Yeah, yeah. Damn me for being left-handed. But yeah, the dittos were fun, and also was fun when you would go into class and see the projector set up.
Oh,
that was fantastic. I'm sure now I don't know if they play DVDs or if they have it digitally or what, I don't know.
I'd be interested to see what it's like now, because now for all I know, they have a cell phone with a mini projector that they plug in.
Neither of us have kids, so we have no idea what goes on in school today.
I think it'd be interesting to visit a modern elementary school to see a lot of hardworking teachers and how do they display information and adjust their courses. I'll
probably just end up screaming at the kids, like, telling them how easy they had things.
You wouldn't scream at the kids.
Yeah, would I? You damn kids! Back in my day!
The worst I can see you as is just about as funny as the two guys on The Muppet Show. That'll be about it.
Yeah, I'll probably feel about as old as they do.
Yeah, well, I just can't see you being mean to a kid.
Well,
you're very open and nice and friendly.
Yes, but I hate children.
It's a phrase, I guess.
Well, except for my nephews, but other than that, I hate kids. Anyway, we're going to take a break now, and we'll be back in a few minutes.
For shopping convenience, it's Shoppingtown on the east, Fairmount Fair on the west. The 40 stores and merchants at Shoppingtown feature the finest merchandise and services available anywhere in central New York. At Fairmount Fair, the beautiful enclosed mall means 72-degree comfort, perfect for leisurely shopping any time of the year. Shop Shoppingtown on the east, Route 690 to exit 3W and Erie Boulevard East. And Fairmount Fair on the west, Route 5 West Genesee Street. Two great centers for one great community.
This is a model of Carrier Tower at Money Plaza. And right down here is where you'll find the Chase Manhattan Bank. Chase is here in Syracuse with a wide variety of personal, auto, and commercial loans. Commercial loans for small businesses as well as big ones. We've come to Syracuse because we believe in its future and want to be a part of its growth. So come on in for a free gift and find out that you have a friend at Chase Manhattan.
Hi, we're back with episode 2 of the Syracuse Nostalgia Podcast. Our guest today is Peter King. He was a DJ on 62 WHEN from 1980 to 1990. He currently works for CBS Radio down in Florida, and he's worked with NASA and done a lot of spectacular things. Excuse me. So we'll talk about that. But he was kind enough to send me a clip of himself on the air from 1983. I guess it's called an air check for people in the business.
Wow.
So here's a clip of Peter King on the air in Syracuse in 1983.
When you've got the Syracuse entertainer, you've got Peter King. WHEN.
62 WHEN, going places in the Wednesday special, and the first of 4 possible songs by Glenn Campbell we could play for you today. He made his living during the 60s and the 70s singing about places such as Galveston, Texas. And we'll have more of our Wednesday special coming up for you, including your first listen of our famous places mystery medley coming up in just a couple of minutes. We mentioned a few minutes ago last night's WHEN Heavy Spikers volleyball game, and I did want to mention too, because in the 3 or 4 years I've been playing volleyball here, last night had to have been the best crowd and certainly the most enthusiastic crowd we ever had. They made it feel like a World Series up there. And we thank everybody who came out to Baldwinsville last night and helped us raise all the money, $154 worth, to help purchase sports equipment and new library books for the school. Now, if you like volleyball, either playing or watching, don't miss the 6th Annual Volleyball Marathon for the benefit of Easter Seals. It takes place in just a couple of weekends, March 4th and 5th. at Sundown Liverpool Tennis, Racquetball, and Fitness Club on Morgan Road. Over 100 teams will be competing for great prizes, including painters' caps, T-shirts, jogging shorts, Pizza Hut VIP cards, and the first place prize of a $100 team dinner at RJ O'Toole's, along with a stereo headset for each player and individual trophies. For more information or to register, you can call Easter Seals today at 471-7873. A $25 deposit is required to reserve your team's playing time. Sponsored by 62 WHEN, Pizza Hut, and Hills Department Stores.
In 1932, we were young and...
Hi, we're back with Peter King. Peter, how are you?
Good. Nice to be with you guys today.
Yeah, thank you very much for being on the show. We really appreciate it.
Well, I'm very happy to be here because Syracuse is a very, very special place to me, and I spent 10.5 great years there, and still have many, many close friends who are in the area.
Oh, that's great. You're in Florida now, right?
I am in Orlando, Florida, and I am a radio correspondent for CBS News, and covering things here in Florida and sometimes around the country. I anchor radio newscasts. I do reporting and a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It keeps life interesting.
Oh, nice. I can't imagine you would miss the weather up here in Syracuse, though, right?
You're absolutely right about that. You know something? The last New York winter I had was actually in Rochester. I lived in Rochester for almost 3 years after leaving Syracuse. And you know what? We had some great snowstorms, some great cold snaps, and the last year that I was in Western New York, it seemed like it snowed about a foot every hour during one storm. That's a little bit of an exaggeration. I don't miss the weather, but I do miss the summers and spring and fall up there because you know there was no better time to be going into the valleys and things like that when the colors are out in the fall. And the thing I loved about spring, of course, was that, you know, after those frigid winters of sitting inside and watching SU basketball on TV, you know, everybody comes out of their hidey hole and it's like, hey, we're alive.
Right, yeah. Yeah, the winters are brutal here. This past one, it's been off and on pretty bad.
Well,
like last week it was snowing like crazy, and now it's 50 out. So.
And here in Florida, it's been really, really weird. We've had a lot of temperatures in the 80s in the last month and a half or so, which is insane for January, February. In fact, today, talking to you on this March day, we have our air conditioning on, and that just seems so wrong.
Oh, geez.
Wow.
So, are you from the Syracuse area originally? Or?
I grew up in downstate New York. I wound up, I lived outside of New York City in a small town called Dobbs Ferry. I wound up at college at Ithaca College, which is how I wound up in Syracuse in kind of a roundabout way. When I was going to Ithaca, I worked at WTKO down there. I worked at the college station, WICB. In fact, my brother and I wrote a book about Ithaca radio called Ithaca Radio.
Oh, nice.
Which was a real homage to the stations back in the day. But while I was working and living in Ithaca, I used to hear this fabulous station out of Syracuse called 62 WHEN.
Yep.
And it was a big powerhouse AM station that did a lot of promotion, had great music, great news, great on-air personalities. And that was a station I really wanted to work for someday. I tried to get a job there as a part-timer during college. I thought I was a lot better than I really, really was, and I certainly wasn't ready for that. But a number of people I went to school with worked there part-time and later full-time as well. My time came in 1980, 2 years after I graduated from Ithaca, and after spending 2 years working in the Burlington, Vermont market.
So you actually were trying to get into WHEN and succeeded. So.
I thought it was the greatest station ever. I mean, it had everything, and I wanted to be a part of it. It just sounded like it was alive and a real fabric of the community kind of place. Lots of involvement, and it had great ratings. I mean, it seemed like everybody knew the station and that kind of thing. When I got there in 1980, that was certainly true.
Yeah, that was AM at the time was the big thing. Like even before FM sort of took over, and now I don't know. I'm not sure what the big thing is. XM, I don't know.
Well, you know what? AM at the time, you're right. AM was king there, and FM radio came to Syracuse late. Syracuse didn't have its first album rock station until the late 70s with 95X. It didn't have a dominant FM station until the mid-80s with Y94 FM, which eventually dethroned WHEN for the 25-54 age demographic. So when I got there in 1980, AM was still king. We were still playing music on AM as well as doing all the other services, and the format was called full service adult contemporary because we did everything. I mean, we had music, we had news, we had promotions, we had theater critic, movie critic, and Doug Brody.
Oh, nice.
All kinds of great public service stuff. The only thing that we didn't do is play-by-play sports. Because WSYR had all the Syracuse properties at the time, Syracuse University, I should say, and the Chiefs for baseball were kind of a non-entity for radio. It wasn't what you would call a moneymaker.
Oh, right.
But we had, but we really had it all in terms of programming, community involvement, station promotion. The people I worked with in that day, I mean, they were all people that you could relate to if you listened to them on the radio.
Yeah, it's weird to think of because when you think of AM now, it's just mostly just talk radio or religious programming or something. But yeah, back then it hit everything, and it seemed like the DJs back then as well were allowed to be have bigger personalities than than people on TV and stuff.
Absolutely, and I started out by doing the all-night show, and when Bob Carolyn hired me to do all nights in the spring of 1980, he said, "So, what do you want to do with your 6 hours on the air?" And I was like, "Wow." I'd only been in the business like 4 years. Nobody had ever asked me that. It was always, here's what you're going to do, here's what we want you to do. And there had been a guy who'd been there ahead of me named Dave Green, who had moved on to WGY Albany, Schenectady, and had done an overnight trivia show. And I said, well, you know what? You guys haven't done that in a few months. How would you feel about reviving that? And that's kind of how I made my name there. But you're right. The rest of the personalities we had, I mean, they were just a great bunch of guys. We had Ray DiOrio, who was doing Morning Drive. Ray wasn't what you would call a creative morning guy, but he was the guy who you could always depend on to wake you up with a good, with a friendly sounding voice, the information you needed to know. And when I say creative, I mean these days morning guys have to be super duper funny and have a lot of bits and things like that. And that wasn't Ray, but he was the consummate good guy sounding morning personality. And he was followed by a guy named Joe Gallagher, who came over from Albany. In fact, Joe and I were both up for the midday job, and Joe got it. And, my first question after Joe got it was, Joe who? And then I got there and I listened to it, and I thought, oh, my God, this guy is terrific. I mean, he did some character voices, and he was just kind of off-the-wall funny and off the cuff. There was nobody funnier than he was, and he was kind of the big personality on the station, even though he was in middays and not in mornings.
Right.
In afternoon, we had Jay Flannery, who to this day is a very good friend, and Jay had been there for about 3 years or so by the time I got there, and again, the dependable guy you wanted to go to have on the drive home. And he and Gallagher used to do stuff together during the crossover period, when Joe was getting ready to go off the air, Jay was getting ready to come on, and it was always funny stuff. At night when I started, a guy named Dick O'Neill, who is now a general manager of a cluster of stations down here in Central Florida, up in Gainesville. And we had some great weekend talent, too. The guys I remember the most, Tom Owens would be one, and I think Tom is doing mornings on the country station up there, B104. Tom is like one of the all-time good guys in radio, and he did Sunday nights, and it was always a pleasure to see him and follow him on the air. We also had a guy named Jay Walker, who had been in the business full-time, got out of it full-time, was an engineer at GE or something like that, but was one of those dependable guys who you could plug in to fill in on the weekend or on the weekday, and he would do a great job for you. And, again, a terrific guy who died in the late 1980s, way too young, but just an absolute delight. And I haven't even touched on the news staff because let me tell you something. They were amazing. Bill Carey, who is a legend in Syracuse News, was the news director when I got to WHEN. And the people that he had working for him were fantastic. Everybody was vastly underpaid and worked way too many hours. But, man, we kicked ass. I can say kick ass, right?
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
I mean, I was a DJ at the time, but I learned so much from watching Bill and his news staff work, and that has helped me in my career in journalism, both in local radio and later here at CBS.
You know, it's funny hearing all those names. A lot of, for like me personally, a lot of them I remember because I was born in '72, so by 1980, I wasn't listening to the radio that much. But now that you say all the names, they're like ingrained in my memory. Like, you know, I must have heard them on an almost daily basis, you know, from my parents.
Yeah, and you know who I need to mention? We had a plane. We had Captain Gordon back in the 70s, and then Captain Scott King, who later used his real name on other stations, Captain Tony Bombardo, who, I mean, the airplane, the spirit of Syracuse. I mean, that was a big deal to have your own traffic plane in a market that size. That was huge.
Yeah,
and remember, crazy. It was before all the traffic services like, you know, Metro and Shadow Traffic and all that. And I mean, it sounded larger than life.
Oh yeah, it was crazy to think of now that there was a guy in a plane flying around Syracuse checking the weather every day. You know, and to come on, it was Tony Bombardo. He came on after he left WHEN, right? He went to, I think, Channel 9 News.
Yeah, he went to Channel 9, and he was working for doing traffic on several radio stations after he left us back, I want to say, around 1990, which is around the time I left, too. And he was special. Let me tell you something. An outgoing guy and the guy you wanted representing your radio station out and around. I mean, just about everybody fit that profile. But, you know, people thought he was extra special because he was the guy in the plane.
Oh, yeah. And, that was a really cool job to have.
Yep, and he was the pitcher on our softball team, too. And he was pretty good.
Oh, cool. So how did that work? Was it like a... like CB technology at the time to get him on the radio?
I'm sorry, say again?
Well, how did that work? Did you just phone in, or was it like a CB technology? How did you get the weather reports in there?
It was really easy. We had a two-way radio that was up in the airplane. We could hear we could pick up the signal at the radio station because, you know, when the airplane's flying, the signal travels in a straight line and goes anywhere, and very rarely did we have any radio troubles. Later on, we had a high-quality transmitter, and people know in the business as a Marti, M-A-R-T-I, as a brand name, and used that. So that's how we got the traffic
report.
I
think at the time I thought that was the coolest job to have, to fly around in a plane.
Well, it was, and I got to tell you, among the things I did, I got a chance to fill in for him as traffic reporter.
Oh, wow.
The funniest thing about all of that was that we had a number of people who filled in for him at the traffic reporter's seat, but a couple of them got airsick and they only went up one or two times. Flying a small plane is a whole lot different than flying a bigger airplane, of course, and it takes getting used to if you've never done it. But I had a great time, and I was his designated fill-in, probably for about 8-9 years.
Wow.
Oh, nice. Now, did you, did you put on the Captain Scott King voice and pretend you were him? Or?
No.
Oh, okay.
And we joked that I was his illegitimate son, Peter King.
Right. It's funny, when he came on Channel 9, I saw, as Tony Bombardo. I thought, wow, he sounds just like the other guy who used to do traffic. I didn't realize it was the same person. But.
Well, there's a great story behind that. When Park Broadcasting took over the stations in 1977, took over the station, there was a guy named Captain Gordon Spooner, who flew for Air National Guard later on. And when he left, they decided that they were going to name the new guy, Captain Scott King, and trademarked the name so he couldn't go work for a competitor using that name.
Okay.
It was a very shrewd move.
Wow. Yeah, that's a little odd. So, did you have any other like funny or odd assignments that they sent you on for WHEN that you'd like to share?
No, I worked 2.5 years on the overnight show. I worked for about 7 or 8 years on doing middays, and also along the way did a lot of commercial production when I was there. And in the very end, I was the program director for WHEN during the last of its real glory days. We were really struggling to keep the format alive, but I also worked on the FM as the morning guy on WRHP, which by that time was a beautiful music station. They had taken a very successful country station, and because the owner, Roy Park, loved the beautiful music, easy listening format, he decided to switch all of his FMs over in the seven markets that he owned. And I mean, it was an awful move. Station didn't make a lot of money, but he loved the format, so we had to do it.
Yeah, sounds good. Since we are, for the Syracuse Nostalgia Podcast, I have to ask: do you have any good memories of the Syracuse area, whether it be the bars, restaurants, malls, anything any places you like to hang out? And
oh boy! I mean, how much time have we got here?
Well, you said you used to play piano in some of the bars, right?
Well, yeah, I played piano in a lot of places around there. I started my first paid piano gig was for Graziano's Casamia down in Canastota, and but there was a relationship there. I married his daughter. The marriage didn't last, but I played down there for a bit, and in Syracuse, oh boy, played in a lot of places. My first paid gig playing the piano was at a place called the Park Circle that was owned by a guy named Danny Clam, and I have no idea if Danny's still in the area. But
where was that?
It was the first place that I got hired to play piano, and first place I got fired to play piano.
Nice.
The maitre d' came up to me in the middle of a song and said, "Danny wants you to stop," and I said, "Stop playing," and I said, "You mean after this set?" And he said, "No, right now."
Play far, far away. No,
they paid me, and I was out the door. I played at a place that was in Liverpool, right down the road from WHEN, called Tudors. It was a family-owned place that had a grand piano and really good food too. Played there for a bit, but the best gig that I had was at Coleman's, which was still had just gotten a piano in 1988, that spring. They were looking for a piano player, and somebody I knew who handled the advertising for them said, I know who you want. And I wound up playing up there for Peter Coleman for 2.5 years, and it was fantastic. Had a lot of fun. The regulars would always come in. I'd always get the regular guys who'd say, "Hey, play something you know." Peter was wonderful to work for, and he knew I was working early mornings but playing piano there until late at night. And I didn't want to drive all the way back to Canastota, where I was living at the time, and he would let me take a nap in the room off of his office when I got there in the afternoon, which was very, very helpful.
Oh, geez. Right.
I wound up later moving back into town after I got divorced, and didn't have to worry about that. But it was one of the very sweet and nice things he did for me. And the people who came there every week, and I played there 2 or 3 nights a week. It was terrific. The other thing is, when I interviewed with him, I said, I don't play Irish music. And he said, "That's okay. Don't want you to." And I said, "Okay, then we're going to be good."
That's good. Yeah, that works. Yeah, it was. I was reading the nice WHEN site. I think one of the former DJs created it, right?
Jay Flannery did that.
Okay, I was reading that you guys used to play pranks on each other quite a bit at the time, and you had quite a little creative nickname, right?
Oh, well, let's go back to Joe Gallagher, who came up with all the nicknames.
Okay.
He got us all involved in that. And, there were a lot of pranks and stuff, but it was Joe who came up with the nicknames. This all started when he decided when softball season was starting, and he said, you know what? We all should have nicknames, and I'm going to start with me. Well, you had ball players named Pee Wee, like Pee Wee Reese.
Oh, yeah.
He said, maybe I should be Wee Wee Gallagher, so everybody could yell, "Go Wee Wee!" And then it took off from there. He named Ray DiOrio Raisin Bran DiOrio. Ray wasn't amused.
No.
Jay Flannery became Brownie Flannery because Joe painted him as a brown noser.
Oh.
Dick O'Neill became Stinky, and I still call him Stinky to this very day, even though he doesn't and didn't.
Okay.
And I became P.U. King, as in Peter Ulysses King.
So you're a P.U.
Yeah, and you had to take it with a grain of salt. Later on, we had a guy named Vic Johnson, who's now living down here in Florida, and he took over the night show, and he was a big guy, and Joe called him Sasquatch.
Wow.
So none of these names made it onto the air then, I assume?
They all made it on the air.
I mean, you refer to each other by these names on the air?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. That's great.
Not regularly, but
okay.
If we were talking softball, but it was mostly Joe's bit. And, I wasn't going to call myself P.U. King on the air. But right. We'd refer to Joe as Wee Wee.
That's great. I was also reading on the site, you being in radio, you'd get some, free concerts and free things, from sponsors. And I was quite jealous to see you got to see the Rolling Stones for free in 81.
Yep.
Is that right?
I was at the Carrier Dome for that. That was pretty incredible.
Do you have anything you'd particular stick out about that show? Because
well, I remember these singers always use wireless mics.
Yeah,
and we were able to pick up Mick Jagger's mic on the police scanner.
Wow. Okay.
And it was not pretty.
Oh, didn't sound very good without the music behind him.
It was not pretty. It sounded awful. The other thing I remember was I did a no-no. I was working overnight at the time, and I was making the princely sum of maybe about $9,000 a year, and I won tickets from our competitor, 94 Rock at the time, to go see Foreigner. Our general manager wasn't amused, but karma, as they say, is a bitch, and I wound up getting my car towed when I parked to go at the Carrier Dome.
Oh, jeez. That's great.
He was Bob Carolyn was kind enough not to gloat, but there was a smile.
Oh. Well, as we sort of wrap up a little bit here, I just want to talk about what you're doing now. You said you moved to Florida after.
I wound up in Florida after Rochester. I got fired from my last disc jockey job in Rochester when the station got sold. My then wife at the time, who also had worked at WHEN and later 93Q, and her name was Simone, and that was the name she used on the air. Well, we wound up in Rochester together, got married there. That didn't last, but that's a different story.
Okay.
We both lost our radio jobs at about the same time and decided whoever gets a good gig in a good place first, that's where we'll go. Mm-hmm. And she wound up getting hired in Daytona Beach, and I thought, after last winter, Florida sounds really, really good. And I came down here with no job, but wound up walking into a news talk station at Daytona Beach where the news director thought, maybe I was smart enough to make the transition to news. And I was ready to do that. Oh. And that's where it all started. I started filing stories that I was doing locally in Orlando when I got a full-time gig here. Started filing for CBS, which was our network. It got to the point where they started calling me for stuff, and I was on the network every day as well as local radio. When Clear Channel bought our stations here in Orlando, I wound up working full-time as a freelancer for CBS and did a lot of traveling. We also, at the time, in 1997, the Space Shuttle program was in full swing and then some, so I was getting to cover a bunch of Space Shuttle flights and NASA stuff by virtue of the fact that I happen to live here and they didn't have to pay somebody to come down and do it. And that's sort of how I made my name. There was other stuff over the years. I mean, hurricanes and all kinds of disasters. The Florida wildfires in 1998 come to mind.
Wow.
Later on, Hurricane Katrina and the Haiti earthquake in 2010, and all kinds of other breaking news stories like that. And you know, the one thing I like to say about being a reporter in Florida is all the weird stuff always happens here, and if you can't make a living as a reporter here, you must be brain dead because all the weird stuff happens here.
I was going to actually, that was something I was going to ask you about all the strange things that seem to happen in Florida. There's even a Twitter page it's called The Florida Man. I don't know if you've heard of that.
There is. And if I can recommend a book by a guy named Craig Pittman, who is a writer for the Tampa Bay Times, the book is called Oh, Florida. And, you know, he's got a lot of stories in there that I covered, that I knew, and a bunch that I never heard of. That's interspersed with a history. This is really an odd state, and it's always interesting here. I mean, you know, look, we had Cuban boat boys wash up ashore on here. We had an election recount that was decided by a few hundred votes.
Right.
I mean, that really kind of set the tone for everything that was to come after the year 2000.
Yeah, a Florida Man Twitter page has something every day. Like, you know, somebody's eating somebody else's face, or you know, Florida Man.
The face biting thing, or you know, you get really, really dumb criminals who shoot themselves in the foot.
Right.
We had that happen here in the Orlando area this week. You get the latest as we're talking. The new University of Florida student president got himself arrested for trying to tip over motorcycles down at Key West. He was just elected student president at Florida under, and his campaign motto was, character counts.
Nice.
I mean, you can't make this stuff up, guys.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's, you already answered the question, but I was going to ask you about NASA. That's spectacular. That's like...
Oh, wait, NASA. Oh, keep in mind, we had an astronaut who went crazy and drove from Houston to here nonstop to stalk a romantic rival who was in love with the astronaut she was involved with.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
We had that. We had bad tornadoes. Right? We had Anna Nicole Smith and the Super Bowl all within an 8-day period.
Wow.
This stuff never happens anyplace else.
No, it's boring up here in comparison, sure. Wow.
Only thing strange here is the weather, Peter.
Oh, yeah.
As you know.
Yeah.
And you know what? Down here, you know, we have two weather seasons: hurricane season and not.
Well, here there's snow or construction.
Yep, and well, we have construction all year long, and you know, the highway to hell, Interstate 4, is always under construction, and when they finish it in another 100 years, it'll be a great interstate. The other thing is we have two colors down here for foliage, green and brown.
Okay. Yeah, like I've been there. I know what you mean by that. So as you said, you co-authored a book. Can people pick that up anywhere? Is that still available?
Well, you know what? It still might. I know at one point Barnes & Noble in DeWitt was selling it, and you know, you could certainly go online to any of your favorite booksellers, whether it be Barnes & Noble or Amazon. The book is called Ithaca Radio.
Okay.
And my brother and I wrote it a few years ago. We would love to sell more copies, so if you want to find out how a lot of really fine broadcasters started, go buy the book. Buy 10 copies.
Sounds good. Well, just closing out here, is there anything you wanted to say to your co-workers? Is that a word? Co-workers, people you worked with back here in Syracuse, or
you know something? There's still a lot of people who I worked with and was friends with who are in the media up there, and I'm still in touch with them. A whole bunch of news guys over at Channel 9, including Jim Campagna, who's their news director. Dan Cummings. We all work together at WHEN, and there are several others there who we worked with as well. It's no longer Clear Channel; it's now iHeart Radio. We've got a bunch of former WHEN co-workers who are working for the iHeart stations down there, and Rick Yacobush, who's the general manager, you know, started out as a disc jockey on WOLF back in the 70s. He'd be a good one to talk to, too.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, if any of them are hearing this, I hope they know that they are so deep in my heart, and my memories of Syracuse are all great. I had so much fun up there, and, I still consider that in many ways home. Oh. There are days when I would kill for a Hyde's hot dog.
Right.
Yeah.
Or, any one of a number of other things. I always looked at Syracuse as a big, small town where everybody knew each other, and you always felt at home. And it was welcoming to me from day one. And you know something? I enjoyed almost every moment of the 10 and a half years I spent there. It's a wonderful place to live. It was a wonderful radio market in which to work back in the 80s. And, my God, I'm just so glad I got to be there.
Yeah, it is a great place to live and grow up. And, thank you for coming on the podcast and sharing some of your stories with us. And we really appreciate it.
Guys, thanks for having me on, and I wish you the best of luck. There's so much to talk about and so many people you could interview. This podcast could literally go on forever, and I hope it does.
Yeah, I mean, if you have if any of your friends or colleagues want to come on, send them my way.
Well, you guys asked some decent questions, so I'll put the word out. I mean, if the questions had really sucked, I would have said, don't go anywhere near these guys.
Oh, that's so much pressure.
No, seriously, it's been a lot of fun, and I'm very, very honored that you asked me to be on, and I wish you the best of success. And, I love Syracuse, and I always will.
Okay, thank you very much. Hold on for a second, and we'll be right back after this.
Operation Rock and Roll, the mother of all concerts. The Miller Genuine Draft Concert Series at Cuyahoga County Fairgrounds. Judas Priest. Alice Cooper. With Motorhead, Dangerous Toys, and Metal Church. You know it's summer when they're rockin' in Weedsport. Tickets at Ticketmaster, Ticketron, and the Fairgrounds box office. All music available on Epic and Columbia CDs and cassette. August 8th, Operation Rock and Roll, the Miller Genuine Draft Concert Series.
Oh, that was a great interview with Peter King. I'd like to thank him for being on the show. Wasn't that a great interview, Ken?
Yes.
I love the part about the flying monkeys and the Eggo waffles that we talked about. That was a great story, wasn't it?
One of my favorites.
Yeah, I mean, well, okay, full disclosure here, we're recording this beforehand, so through the magic of editing, we'll put it on there later. But I'd like to thank Peter again for his time and calling us in. I really appreciate it. He's been a great guy to deal with. And this segment now on the show is when I like to play an old song by a local band. This time we have the band Bratz N Blondz. That's 2 Z's, 1 N. Bratz N Blondz. From 1990, the song is called Funny Way of Scaring You.
Step right up and don't be shy. You paid your money, now come on in. Have a chair, don't be scared. Now the fun is about to begin. got a funny way of scaring you.
That was Funny Way of Scaring You from Bratz N Blondz. I'd like to thank everyone for listening to the episode 2 of the Syracuse Nostalgia Podcast. I'm going to try to do this once a month. Thanks, Ken, for
thank you.
Co-hosting and helping me again.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks to Peter King and to K-Rock Josh for being nice enough to let us in. And thanks to my wife, Kelly, for helping me with everything I do at home with this Syracuse Nostalgia stuff and for being patient about it as well. And I do everything, all this stuff for free, the podcast, the Syracuse Nostalgia site. So if you'd like to help me out a little bit with the financial part of it, there's ads on the top of every page. You click on the ads, it gives me a couple of pennies. I also sell DVDs and T-shirts and a whole bunch of other stuff. You go to the merchandise section of the page. And please, if you like this episode, please like it or leave a comment or leave it stars if you're on iTunes. And you can visit the main site, SyracuseNostalgia.com, Facebook at Syracuse Nostalgia, Twitter at SYR Nostalgia. Thank you, and hopefully we'll see you next month.